Before we begin, I'd like to make this like interactive. So if you have any questions or, just let me know. Just a few guys here, so it's all pretty casual. So before we begin, I was just wondering how many people have ever worked with Selenium or things like this? Yeah, everybody? So we know what this is, right? This is me. I work at Empire Life. We have offices in Kingston, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg. We're pretty big. And we were like in a hiring spree this year, getting a lot of developers in. We're still hiring, so if you're interested to work with Django or React, just give me a shout or look at our website or whatever. So what I do at work is I work with Python, Django, Postgres, Docker images, Circle CI for continuous integration. Cypress is what it is about today. We do some code climate to make sure our code is good quality. We host everything in Google Cloud, and we do a lot with Auth0 for authentication of people. So those are a couple of key components I work with. So I'm not an expert in Cypress. I'm just here to share what I've learned so far. And Cypress is not like my main focus in my work. So it's just a tool that we use in the pipeline for development, right? And it's a big thing. There's a lot of things you can do with Cypress, and we're just scratching the surface at work. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if you're interested after tonight, just go explore and look at the website, at the documentation, because yeah, this is just an intro. So Cypress was introduced at work this year to us when we're looking for a better end-to-end testing tool. Before that, we worked with Selenium, and so we all know that it's a pain. So this makes things a bit easier. Why do we like Cypress? Well, first of all, it's open source, it's free, so there's no restrictions. You can just download and play with it. However, there is a paid service there. So if you pay for Cypress, it means that you get a dashboard. And in your dashboard online, you can look back at all your test results that go through automated tests in the cloud. So if you ever want to run your tests in like Circle or Jenkins or whatever, they get all recorded and put on the dashboard, and then you can look back at them. That's what you pay for. But otherwise, it's free. We like it because it runs inside a browser, as opposed to Selenium. For Selenium, you need like a bridge component, like a web driver, which is an extra thing you have to install. You have to put jars or whatever DLLs in your system. You don't need this with Cypress. It's just you install the thing and it runs inside the browser, so super easy. It's easy to install. So the command is right there, npm install Cypress. That's all you need to do, and you're ready to go. While you're running the tests, you have access to the complete HTML, JavaScript, everything that's in your browser you have access to right away. Whereas in Selenium, for instance, it's abstracted, so you can only do a few things, right? Cypress is different because it runs inside the application, inside the browser. It's much easier to access anything in there. No flakiness. We all know that if you run Selenium, that sometimes your tests just fail because whatever, some timing thing, or you don't have that with Cypress. It's stable, no flakiness, which I like a lot. When you're writing your tests and you have to like write that you want to access a specific element in your DOM that has a path to it, right? You can use the jQuery notation to access those things. So no more XPath, no more, fooling around with that stuff, just easy. And then also, what's also really nice is you can play back your result, your test result in the browser. You can, in any step in your test, you can go back to and you can debug. So you can put your debug, your inspector on, and you can actually inspect what's going on there on that specific time in your test. And also in your browser, there's this bar where you can enable the element picker. So you enable it, and then you hover over any element you want, you click it, and then you get this suggestion of how you can access that element within your test. What I didn't include here is one thing that's still missing from Cypress is the recording thing that is in Selenium. So in Selenium, you can start something and then just click, and then it's recorded, right? And then you can take that as a script and put that in your Selenium test. So that's not available in Cypress yet, but it's still in development, so I guess it will come soon. So here is a very simple explanation of how an application looks like that's being tested in Selenium versus Cypress. So in Selenium, your Selenium tests are embedded inside your application, right? It has to be native code. So if your code is Python, you have to have Selenium in Python. If it's Java, you have the Selenium jar, and so on and so forth. Cypress is different. In Cypress, your application is just there, and Cypress is another part of your code, but it's not integrated. It's separated. So that's important to remember. So you have no Python version of Cypress, because Cypress is just a JavaScript thing that lives on its own. So here I wanted to show you 3 scenarios in which we at work like to use Selenium. So on the left is me. That's my machine there. I'm working on Selenium, writing tests. So yeah, it's the same picture as slide before, right? So you have your application, your Cypress test separate, and that's me just on my local machine, just writing those tests. When I push this to Git, and we have this pipeline, all this stuff goes over to the cloud to Circle CI, or whatever tool you're using, and it runs automated in the cloud without anybody looking at it. So you could have your mocked application there in your test suite, and Cypress running there in the cloud, testing your application. But because nobody's looking at it, the results are then optionally pushed to the dashboard that I told you about. So that's the paid version here. So what it does is it makes a movie, like an MP4 movie of all your tests, like all the browser interactions, and sends it to that dashboard. So in the dashboard you can look back at those movies, or a screenshot for any failed tests. So that's the second scenario that we're using. The third scenario is for QA. So we have a QA department at work, and the way they work now is if they're QAing an application, they go to the application, like in dev or staging, and they just click. They have their test cases and their requirements, and they just go after each thing and just assert that everything is according to requirements, but it's all manual, right? And so we're trying to move away from that by giving those people also the ability to write Cypress tests. So they can actually automate their work by writing their own QA tests and execute them on a dev or a staging server that runs somewhere in the cloud or whatever. So this is really interesting too, because we'll save a lot of time and effort and money in the long term. Yeah, so that's cool. All right, so let's move on to demo. I will switch this to presentation mode. So what we're looking at here is a little project that I built yesterday evening in my free time. And again, same as my last presentation, I just took the Django tutorial application. This time I downloaded the whole source code from another presentation that somebody ever gave and put the code there. So it's just a clone of that. I templated it with the Kingston Developments meetup theme, so it's all nice. So what this application does is just a simple demo, right? So it's a poll, so you have your questions here, you click on the question, answer the question, and you vote, and there you have your result, and then you can vote again or whatever, right? So nothing exciting, but it is a full application so I took this thing, I wrote some unit tests, I wrote some Cypress tests, I put it in a demo circle CI pipeline, and I actually also deployed it to Google, to the Google Cloud hosting. So this is the same, oh wait, Cypress demo. So this is the same application running online in the cloud. You can actually do that yourself if you're interested. So what I wanted to show you is, first of all, let's go to this actual project. So typically, when you have a project like this, you have tests, right? So here you have your typical unit test. So this is just one test case. It tests the voting process. So the test starts with fixtures. We have a fixtures JSON. When the test starts, we assert that there's no elements in the database. Then we put a request to the method, and then after that we assert that there is actually a record in the database. Pretty simple unit test, but just to make a point. So if you have a test like this and you want to bring this to Cypress, the Cypress test looks a bit the same. Well, this is actually just the interaction on the browser, right? So we visit, and this is the complete flow of the poll. So we visit the home page. So on the home page we have like this anchor tag that links to a question page. So we look that up, and here's like the jQuery notation that I mentioned. So you look up that element, you click on it, and then we do an assertion that the path is actually that. And then we look for the first element that is a choice, like the first answer. We click on that, and then we click on the submit button, and then we assert that we are redirected to this path, and then we assert that there's an element on the page with that specific text. So this is a typical, very simple Cypress test, and I can run it. So I go to my console. Now, when you have installed Cypress, this is the command to open your Cypress runner. So npx cypress open, and then you can give it a config. What I want to do here is I want to say don't watch for file changes, because by default when Cypress opens and you have your test runner and you make changes to files, every time you save it, it reruns the test, which is sometimes nice, but I like to click buttons and I want to start it myself, so that's a thing that you can do. Before we run it, we have to say what the base URL is. Cypress can only run on one base URL. If your application is redirecting to another site, because maybe you have like a pay page and it redirects to a Monero site or whatever, Cypress will stop, because you're only testing one place, right? So that's your base URL. So I set my base URL to that, which is my local host, and then I open my Cypress runner. Which is this guy here. So it looks for all your test cases in your project. I only have one here, but you can have many, of course. I click on it, and now it opens the test in a browser. And it goes really fast, because it's just a really simple, fast test. But the thing is, I can now go over each step of the test, hover over it, and look at the history of what this test did. Right? So here, I was just getting this element here, which is form label for choice 1, which is actually that specific element. I can also inspect and do my things here with my CSS or whatever I want to do. I can do that, which is so much nicer than Selenium, right? Because you can't do this in Selenium. All right. Now, to take this to your automated continuous integration, you have to run this stuff automated in a script. And for that to do, when we are running unit tests in Circle, we have a simple command that says Python whatever run tests, and it just runs all the unit tests, right? And that determines if the specific commit is valid, and it should be processed and merged and blah blah blah. So in that specific call of run tests, which is also doing coverage, we want to include not only the unit tests that are already there, but also run the Cypress test too. So with one command, we can do all the unit tests and all the end-to-end tests. So I had to come up with a way to integrate this into our, in this case, Python test suite. It's a bit ugly, but it works. So what I did is I created a poll test, in this case, which extends from static live server test case, which is a Django class that can run a test server with your application. So when it starts, it loads the fixtures again, and then we can define a test. In this case, we are again first asserting that there's no elements in the database, and then we just call this runner with our specific base URL, and we say I want to run this specific test case. So it runs the Cypress test in a subprocess in the background, and when it finishes, we get an exit code. So when Cypress runs everything successfully, we get a 0 back. If something fails, we get a non-zero back, right? So, and then when it's finished, we just assert that the exit code is 0. And finally, we assert that we actually got a record in a database. So this is great, because we can now run this Cypress test in the pipeline, but we can also do assertions afterwards if the expected database mutations are really done as expected, right? So I can run this. So now all the tests inside my project are now running, which includes the Cypress test. So what we're looking at here is the Cypress test running. It goes super fast because it's only doing a little thing, but the key thing is it is successful, and we get results here without seeing a browser, because this is all automated, right? So it goes inside a headless version of a browser. And like I said before, it generates a MP4 file. So you can actually look back at what the test did. So now I can go to my Cypress folder inside videos and look at this thing. Well, that's it, I guess. I think there should be some more output, but yeah, get the point. Okay, so one step further, when I now go to my let me just make a change to the code and go to my Git. And I commit this, push it. So because I'm now pushing a change to my code, and Git, which is in this case, it's in Bitbucket, which is connected to a Circle CI project. Circle CI will now pick up that change and run the tests. So this is my Circle CI dashboard, and you see that it's actually running the test there. So this is in cloud in Circle. So Circle CI has Cypress built into their internal system. So you don't have to, like in your Circle scripts, install Cypress or do stuff like that. It's already there. So you can just say run tests, and Circle just runs them, which is great. So what we're looking here now is the output from the Circle test script. It is actually internally now installing npm and Cypress and a bunch of requirements. So it takes a couple of seconds, and now it's running the actual test. which also succeeds. And then it goes on to deployment. So now, because all the tests are successful, it deploys it to Google, where the new version is now being deployed and hosted. This takes about 6 minutes, so we're not going to wait for that. But now I can go back to my, so this is the Cypress Dashboard, the paid thing, but I just subscribed yesterday, so this is like the trial, like 30 days, whatever, just to demo what we can do. So as you can see, this is where we left number 5, which was 9 hours ago, but if I refresh, there is our number 6 that just ran, and I can open it up and look at the output of the tests, or now look at the video that Circle-CI recorded. So yeah, it's all there. Right. What else can I tell you? I mean, this is how we use Cypress in our work stream. Yeah, I guess that's it. Any questions?
Do you get the ability to record the videos and images as part of the free version?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's only the dashboard?
Yeah.
Pretty cool tool, for sure.
Yeah.
Pretty Selenium. When you said, can you go back to the slide where you were showing kind of the different, 3 different ways that you use it? I had a question there.
Last one, please.
Where's my play thing? Here? No. Well, just go here.
Yeah, that one there, yeah. Yeah, and you said mocked application. What's the difference there between what you're doing there and what you're doing on Google Cloud hosting?
Right. If you're running your test suite in Circle, I think in general your unit tests should not be dependent on external services.
Oh, so
right?
So that's not the Cypress, or you use Cypress to do unit tests as well?
No. What I'm trying to say there is the application that runs in Circle, which is a mocked application, because you're running the actual application in a test suite, but you don't want to, like, if you're calling APIs or whatever, you don't want your unit test to depend on external services like APIs, right? So you mock all your things there, and you just run the code that is your own application, and that's why it's mocked.
Gotcha. But Cypress is just for like end-to-end kind of automation tests, right?
Yeah. Well, they say it's somewhere between integration and end-to-end, because I don't know. I'm not an expert in how to define that, but I see why. I mean, it's still a big part is still the integration as well. Yeah.
Just a cultural question. The Cypress name comes from the mountain or something?
From what?
The mountain, the Cypress name?
I don't know.
Cypress, no, I'm not sure.
I haven't read the whole website, so but it's probably somewhere there.
It's like a cultural background question.
One thing I noticed with, you said Xcode, I don't find the need to use Xcode really ever in these tests, except when I need to like kind of go up the tree. It can be kind of helpful. How do you navigate if you need to go? Like, can you still do like walk the DOM, or do you have to use selectors to move around?
Yeah, that's So I know this is not answering your question, but it was the one thing that I forgot to show. So here we have the Selector Playground. So if I enable this and I hover over any element here and I click it, you get a suggestion of how you can select that specific element. And then you can copy that to your clipboard and then paste it in your code. I'm actually not the guy that actually writes all the unit tests, but I find that really useful. I don't know about moving up. Can you how would you? Can you describe how you would need that?
Sort of some complex scraping stuff we do. We'll have to select a bunch of rows and then sort of do filtering in code and stuff like that. Like where selectors just kind of aren't enough to get just the set that we want. I should look at the API, like what that returns. It must return you some kind of element model that you can interact with or something.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, the Cypress test itself, right? This is you have
whatever get returns there, whatever has the click method on it, must be some kind of element model or something.
Yeah, so this is based on the test framework they call Mocha, JavaScript Mocha. I'm not familiar with it because I don't like JavaScript or working with it that much. So but anyway, if you know how to deal with Mocha, or I guess it's just jQuery kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
Cool.
So is it a multi-user environment you're using this in? When you're all sharing the same test scripts, or how's it working?
Yeah, we have everything in GitHub. So yeah, with the normal workflow of Git. Yeah, we work with large teams. Yeah.
You share tests easily?
Yeah, and that's my point of the slide here. Is that in this situation here, where a QA person wants to write QA scripts, automated QA scripts, right, for their whatever they need to test, they can just pull from our GitHub and go into the Cypress part of the code repository and write their scripts, and they don't have to run the whole application on their local machine. They can just write the little scripts and then run it in the little Cypress test runner and run it on the actual hosted version of the application, right? And then when they created their scripts and did their work, they can push it back to the repo and can be part of the complete cycle.
Like under what circumstances? Do you run the full suite of end-to-end tests on every push to Bitbucket?
Yeah.
Or, yeah?
Yeah.
It doesn't take too long?
No. The thing that takes the most time is actually installing Cypress on the VM. It takes about a minute or so, but no, the tests are very compared to Selenium. I know Selenium is pretty slow, right? No, Cypress is much faster. Yeah, because it doesn't have to interact with the web driver and all that stuff, all the overhead.
There's a lot of layers in between
You and the browser at that point.
Yeah.
Did you go looking for a new test environment, or do you just somebody heard about it, brought it back to the group and decided to try it out?
Yeah, option B.
Now, Cypress only supports Chrome, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Cypress only supports Chrome, not any other native users. So if you want to do something other than Chrome, right, would you resort to like backup Selenium tests you already have, or what would the pain be on that?
In our situation at Empire, again, the QA team, they do like the full browser testing, and I mean, everything they do now is manual. So one thing that they have on the list is, tested in IE too. And when we're moving towards the third scenario, they will still have to do that, I guess, because you can't run Cypress on IE yet. But it's a new tool. I mean, they released it in 2017, and to me, it's a really cool tool, and I like to see it evolve and support more browsers in the future. I hope so.
Do you know if Cypress supports multi-session testing?
Yes. Yes, I was actually browsing through their docs this evening, and I noticed that they have like.
And Cypress runs within the browser itself.
Yeah.
So you could get the API request. Is that right? No. If Cypress runs into the browser, can you get the API request and see what the responses are?
Yeah.
So theoretically, you can run tests, right, and also verify to assert on the APIs as well.
Yes.
Testing.
Yes.
Because that'd be a huge advantage over Selenium if you can.
No, I mean, in Selenium, like I said, it's pretty abstracted, and you have limited possibilities of just, clicking and putting text in stuff, and that's about it, right? We're here because, as you said, you run inside the browser, inside the environment of the application. You can access anything, including.
Can you access, like, if there's a public API that you make available on window or something, you can access that and all functions, you check properties,
Yep.
you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
Cool.
Not making anything easily available, visible on their website, but only being on browser. Talks about OSs, but it doesn't talk about browsers. Selector on occasion.
You mean browser support?
Chrome only.
Yeah.
Well, it says it's running like Mac OS, Linux, Windows 7 Plus, and a bunch of different Linuxes, but it doesn't nowhere about towns.
Well, the thing is, if you start the test runner and you click on run this test, it just opens Chrome, right? And I don't know what happens if you don't have Chrome on your computer. And if you run it in the cloud in your circle, it runs this on Electron or something.
Which is Chrome.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's only Chrome because Chrome came out with the Chrome driver for iOS integrated. They have a driver specifically just for Chrome, and that's the reason why you can do this. But other drivers haven't done it yet.
They support Canary, Chromium, and Electron. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure when I read about this, I know they were trying to support Firefox.
Seems they have like a roadmap when they're going to give support to the browser already. So yeah, just need to give back to them.
Yeah.
The only issue is like Selenium is so versatile and the community is so large. Even if you do have a problem, they have a solution for it one way or another. Like if you want APIs, right? There are extensions you can have that literally feed your Selenium API calls. Like it's a possibility. And so like videos, like we're using Browser Stack. And so Browser Stack will actually record your sessions and tell you what's clicking where and all that kind of stuff. But the very fact that you can run within Chrome, right? I think that's Cypress's like biggest selling point.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference for sure. Any other questions?
Yeah. So the complete source code of this thing is I published the link on my Slack channel, so you can look back at it if you want. Yeah, and play with it.
Do you know if it supports like Cucumber? Because
Well,
I'm looking at that and it looks exactly like SpecFlow or Cucumber.
That's a really good question. So I was at PyCon a month ago and attended a session about behavioral driven development. So things like Cucumber. And he was presenting more in a pure Python kind of way of doing that. So I asked him, like, is there like a Cypress version of that? And he said, I don't know. But then I looked it up, and actually there is there is a plugin for Cypress to do that. And it's on my to-do list to investigate and try to, because the QA people at Empire are not by definition programmers, right? So they want to write their test in human language. And then if we can find a way to convert that into, with Cucumber for instance, into Cypress scripts, that would be an ideal situation, yeah.
It reduces a lot of time developing.
Yeah, for sure.
Either do it that method or do like steps and just, saves you a long time.
Yeah. All right. Time for beer.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Erwin.